when people think about retirement, and the images really that come to mind are typically the sunsets on the beach, golfing with friends, really finally having the freedom to do what they want, enjoy the fruits of their labor after, decades of hard work. But, behind those glossy brochures and beautiful TV ads is the reality that many retirees face. And that's not everything is always pretty all the time. In fact, when we think about the ugly truth about retirement time, there are things that you need to think about, because retirement planning is more than just saving. It's about preparing really for a future filled with things that could be uncertain. You could have rising costs, emotional decisions that get made along the way, and unexpected challenges that come up. And the ugly truth is, many of these are risk until people don't see it until it's too late. So this segment's going to allow you to identify what some of those risks are, look at your situation and see, are you able to apply those to your own situation and figure it out. Now, number one is you might end up paying more taxes in retirement than what you think. So what you have had is society has taught the majority of Americans to save and invest in a tax-deferred retirement account because taxes will be lower in retirement time. After 30 years of being in the financial services industry and helping hundreds of families retire, what I can tell you is that those people, who are savers, oftentimes their tax bracket is not lower in retirement time, especially when you're going in and you're taking those walks on the beach, you're enjoying golfing, vacationing with friends and family. You're typically spending more money because you have more time in those earlier years. And don't assume that tax rates are going to be lower in the future. In fact, with the big, beautiful tax bill, we've got some extensions of taxes that have come into play. But the reality is that's a temporary tax change. And the reality is our government's unfunded liabilities has created a massive problem as well. We have Danny, who runs our company that is Retirement Tax Partners. And right now, what Danny is doing with a lot of folks is he's doing what-if tax analysis, meaning that he's looking at the tax returns, he's doing an analysis and going through a 25-point checklist to figure out, what can be done to try to save and reduce taxes. And then one of the cases in particular of a couple that we had met with last year, jumped out to me. A couple, they retired a few years ago, living very comfortably. They don't have a lot of debt, and living off of Social Security and taking minimal withdrawals from their investment accounts to cover what they want in life. And because of where standard deductions are, because of the big, beautiful tax bill of going into effect this year, they're ultimately paying almost zero taxes or very, very little taxes. And in essence, if you look at creating a tax roadmap for them, they have the ability where they could shift money over and still be able to pay, an effective tax rate of about 7.5%, with roughly about $60,000 every year. Now, if they did that and they did that on a 4-year plan, at the end of the 4-year plan, they could have over $250,000 of money shifted over into a tax-free potential Roth IRA account. And in that case, then it's going to help with things like required minimum distributions and what the taxes are going to be on that. It's going to help with the issues of a widower's tax, of how tax rates are different for a single versus a joint couple. So the ugly truth here is that your biggest bill you might get after retirement time is taxes. So you want to develop a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. There's 25 different things that we go through on that checklist looking at that. Number two is looking at the fact that inflation's going to eat away at your buying power. We've heard of people taking safe withdrawal rates. So you might have set up the plan to take, let's just say, $3,000 a month out of your retirement accounts. But you had to stress test the plan to say, will that $3,000, is it going to provide enough ability for you to get an inflation pay raise. $100,000, it might cost $160,000 in 15 or 20 years from now. So you want to build that into the plan. A lot of the plans, when people come to the office, I think they don't take that into consideration, leaves them kind of vulnerable, and that dream lifestyle that they had envisioned for them might not keep up with what real world costs are. So the ugly truth here is if your plan assumes today's prices, it may already be outdated. You want to factor in and stress test your plan for inflation. Number 3 is you want to, address the issue of cognitive decline is real and it's financially dangerous. Too often in my 30-year career, I had to run into people that I find in crisis mode. So, it's somebody who picks up the phone and says, I'm in a situation with my parents and my aging parents. They're going through this. They don't have any type of long-term care in place. And what do I do? And those options become more limited as you get older. So some of the traditional planning methods may not even be available. But we don't really want to think about, cognitive decline, but memory loss and, some of the ability to have fatigue, it's common with age. And studies show that, things can change and we gradually decline as we get older, even healthy individuals. So, one move in your 50s and 60s to make is develop a plan that addresses the what if I need healthcare in the future, how to have a written plan, how to have all of the essential documents in place to have everything covered. Another great example is, my youngest son in a few weeks is moving down to go to college in Florida. Because I live here in Ohio, my wife and I were just talking last weekend about making sure that he has all of his updated legal documents. So even an 18-year-old needs those documents, and so does somebody in the future as well, because if something happens, you need to have those things in place beforehand, like the power of attorney, the estate planning documents as well. And then you got to, number 4, narrow in on that topic of long-term care. It's kind of the elephant in the room, and I get it. If you've ever looked at, the cost of traditional long-term care insurance, if you can even get it, is ultra expensive, for something that you may not ever need. But the reality is, roughly 70% of people over the age 65 are going to need some form of long-term care, and most of that, if not all of it, is not going to be covered from Medicare. And nursing homes can cost $100,000 a year, and even getting care at home can be financially draining. And the last thing that you want to do is you want to drain down all of those resources, and then when those resources get drained down, then your surviving spouse is left with nothing. So think of that ugly truth as, one healthcare crisis could wipe out your entire nest egg. Planning for long-term care while you're in your 50s and 60s means that you're going to have a lot more choices. Buying expensive insurance doesn't mean that that's the only option. There's other choices, other strategies. Maybe you could be self-insured. Maybe there's ways to leverage your existing assets. There's things like hybrid life long-term care policies that are out there. If you plan further ahead, there's ways to do Medicaid-type planning. Annuity contracts offer some different benefits as well. Number 5, nobody wants to talk about death, but you really kind of need to. Many retirees, are talking about estate planning, and they get really uncomfortable when you start thinking about estate planning. But failing to plan can lead to unnecessary taxes, disputes, assets being tied up in court. It seems like we had a lot of celebrities in the headlines lately. Losing a legend like Hulk Hogan. And if you think about some of the other celebrity disasters that have happened, whether it's Prince and not having proper estate plans, you don't have to be ultra wealthy to have an estate plan in place. The ugly truth here, though, is dying without a plan not only can hurt your family financially, emotionally, it can also hurt the loved ones with not having clear intentions of what your wishes were. So you want to make sure that you have updated beneficiary forms on file. You make sure you have a will, a trust, somebody legally empowered to take care of your affairs if you become incapacitated either now or in the future. You know, the good news is all of these ugly truths that we talked about today are issues that you can face and you can take control over. The truth about retirement planning is some of the things can be ugly, but once you get those checked off the list, then they're done. Ignoring those things is not going to make it prettier. The key is really not necessarily to wait until it's a panic situation. Plan now because you can have more clarity and certainty about the future. You can understand your tax liability. Again, getting things like retirement tax partners to run a tax what if analysis. You can build inflation into your plan and understand what type of investments work best to offset inflation. You can create a long-term care plan. You can work with a professional, get your legal documents in place. And, it's not just about where you're at today. Think about how fast this year has gone by. Time flies and it goes really quick. Getting a second opinion can be another way to help you out and really thinking, I'm going to invest just a little bit of time to be able to get these things taken care of and not having to worry about what are the consequences by not doing something which could be much costlier in the long run.